One can't stay out of doors all the time. One needs to come in from the cold. We are the Spy-Fi guys, and this is the spy who came in from the cold.
Welcome to the Spy-Fi Guys, where we cover spy fact, spy fiction, and everything in between. I'm Zach, and this is Christian.
Hey.
And we are doing The Spy Who Came In From the Cold. I've been looking forward to this literally since we started the podcast.
Really?
Yeah, I love this stuff. This is what I signed up for.
All right. I mean, wait, so you've never read nor seen this before?
I read the book a long time ago, and then I read it again this week just for the cast, but I had not seen the movie.
Ah, okay. Yeah, no, I saw this. I saw and read it. I'm going to say about, now that feels like a long time ago, about 15 years ago, 2005 or so.
Well, let's see how well you remember it. So the movie is from 1965, and it stars Richard Burton, an actor who I am not familiar with. How about you?
Not so much. Actually, I'm not. Now I'm gonna think. I know he is an actor of that period, but I can't name another movie that he's in.
As usual, we'll go through the movie, and then we'll do a little spy fact versus fiction. Though in this case, I have differences between the book and the movie. Maybe Christian has more, and then we'll do our ratings, and then we'll get out of here.
Yeah.
So, do you have the IMDb synopsis?
Yes, I do. So, the synopsis is as follows. British agent Alec Lemass refuses to come in from the Cold War during the 1960s, choosing to face another mission, which may prove to be his final one.
For our intro to the podcast, we like to do the taglines as sort of our intro thing, though we've been getting away from that lately. And according to IMDb, the taglines of this movie are absurd. So I'm going to read a few of them for you. So first of all, they're in all caps. I won't shout them, but I'll do what we call stage shouting, which is where you shout, but you don't. Okay, here we go. Here's number one. Brace yourself for greatness. Number two, the man who knows all the dirt, sheer and naked. Number three, the book the world could not lay down is now a motion picture. And then finally, the UK theatrical, it plunges you knife deep, into actual espionage. It gives you the dirt as well as the dazzle. Here is excitement sheer and naked and unforgettable.
So what I find fascinating about this is that, what is 1965? So this is after the first three Bond movies have already come out. And the contrast between, say, Thunderball, which came out the same year, and this is immense.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. There's an introduction in the book, which was written well after it came out in the sort of modern era by LeCarre. And he says that in a lot of ways, his book was not intended as a response to Bond, but it came out in a world where people just couldn't get enough of Bond. And the contrast is huge. But I wonder if the taglines were just made up by the marketing team.
I mean, it could be, yeah.
I think the major thing I like about this is both the book and the movie are just full of atmosphere.
Very true.
A world of shadows where everyone's kind of a crappy person, and both, you can't tell the difference between right or wrong. And it's atmospheric in a way that none of the other movies we've covered so far, even Valkyrie. Valkyrie probably comes the closest,
really?
But it still isn't quite there. I think.
All right.
So with that in mind, you want to jump right in? Let's get this going.
So we start off at Checkpoint Charlie. There's a very long title scene, and just like a title scene, not in the Bond sense, but literally just looking out early and all the credits. And here's where we meet Alec Lemass, who is the Berlin station chief.
Right.
And as we meet him, he's waiting for one of his agents to come across the wall.
There's an American agent there who's he's not going to come here tonight. Maybe he'll come tomorrow. You can come back. And to which Lemus, I think it's Lemus, says, agents aren't airplanes. They don't travel on schedules or something like that. And then he takes a drink of liquor to help him wait.
So we get the sense that he's sort of almost burned out, at least at this point in time.
Well, he definitely comes off as a cynical, world-weary person. He almost doesn't even need to say anything for
Mhm.
you to get the picture about who he is, which
Right.
I definitely appreciate. We get to see sort of the Berlin Wall in action also during this
Hmm.
opening scene, and he notices that there are more guards this time
Hmm.
walking the line than there usually are.
Hmm.
But eventually, his agent shows up with a bicycle,
Hmm.
goes through, gets his passports cleared, but while he's about to cross the final line, suddenly, and it is
Uh,
sudden, like I was like
yeah.
startled. I was like startled when the alarms go off and spotlights shine.
And then the agent gets well. The alarms go off, and they start shooting at the agent. And I did appreciate how he tries to go in like a serpentine pattern with the bike to try to avoid getting shot. But nope, he gets shot and falls basically at Limas's feet.
And then one quick thing I forgot to mention was that he talks to a couple of West German guards there, and he said,
Hmm.
"Can you provide covering fire to people coming over the wall?" And they say, "No, we can only fire if we've been fired upon." Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which is I thought was very interesting. I mean, given the very tense situation at the Berlin Wall, I can understand why. But that's just like a very interesting justification.
They actually say if we start shooting at them, we could start a war, which would be a
Yeah. Oh
nuclear
yeah.
war.
Hmm.
But I also it is also very it fits the theme of the movie of like people are
Hmm.
like it's not our problem and we don't want to get involved. The agent dies, he falls down, we see a reaction shot of Lemus, and then boom, the scene changes like immediately
Hmm.
to we get old school Trafalgar Square,
Hmm.
London, England, and he's going to meet Control, which is the movie's equivalent of M.
Right, right. And I also did notice that, well, I think we get a shot of him flying, and it's on Pan Am. So last week we covered a movie which had TSA. This week it's Pan Am. So yet another very retro airline that no longer exists.
I mean, when people say things like TWA or Pan Am, it certainly conjures up an image of a decade,
Yeah.
right up there with fashions.
Yeah. So as he goes in and meets Control, they have a briefing and.
So they were like, okay, listen, this guy who was killed, this agent who was killed, is named Carl Riemek, and he was the last agent we had in East
That's
Berlin.
right. Yeah.
So we have nothing, and the man who's been killing all of our agents is named Munt.
Hmm.
Lemus has a personal grudge against him for killing all of his friends. So even though Control wants him to stop, they have one last mission: liquidate Munt, and that's an
Hmm.
exact quote. Is they use liquidate, so they want to take him out. One last, so Lemus has one last thing to do. They also talk a little bit here about like their philosophies.
Hmm.
So Control is like the democracies, the West. We've pledged never to go on the offensive, to always be defensive, but that doesn't mean we can't be ruthless. We
Right.
can't be less wicked than our enemies, which of course is one of the themes of the movie.
Hmm.
And I don't know if you want to talk about these deep, biting questions, but that is something that will recur.
I mean, I don't know that I have any answers really.
There are no answers. That's the point.
Yeah.
So basically, the point is they're setting up that they're going to do a plot, and
Hmm.
the plot's going to get ugly. People are going to get hurt, and
Right.
he sends Lemus on his way. And then in the next scene, Lemus is on his way to the unemployment office.
Yep. So it looks like basically an unemployment office, and so you have he goes into the in there, and they're calling people's names, and once they call his name, he goes up to the assistant or the aid worker basically, and have languages. I don't really know what kind of job can you give me. I just need something that pays me. And so go through a couple different options, and the one that he ends up with is a library job. And so he goes into the library. We have it sorted by author and by title, but now we're also categorizing them by subject matter, which I
Mhm.
thought was a interesting. Like, all right, no Dewey Decimal System here yet.
Well, they're getting there. So I
Yeah.
should say a couple things. First, it's not just any library. It's like a paranormal psychic library.
That's right. I forgot that. Like I remember that later on the movie talk about, where did werewolves go under?
So I have no idea why it was like a psychic library. Why couldn't it just have been a normal library? I thought about it and I can't make heads or tails of it.
Lost you.
Also, one thing I wanted to mention is that in this scene, before he goes to the unemployment office, there's an establishing shot of the outside, and there's a newspaper, and the headline of the newspaper is London Murder Hunt. So going by what we talked about in America Made last week, how nothing's in a movie accidentally, I kind of feel like that's more establishing that there's going to be murder and there's going to be a hunt. While he's at the library, we learn that he has a really good memory, because there's a part where the head librarian is like telling him a bunch of names and he remembers them all immediately after being told them once. And that he has like a sarcastic wit.
Which I appreciated.
I think someone says, "Do you drink?" Or she says, how's your handwriting? And he says, "It's good except on the weekends." While he's there, he also meets Nancy Perry.
Who we just know as Mrs. Perry or Nan. We don't find out her full name of Nancy until much later, I believe.
It's Ms. Perry.
Oh, Ms. Perry. Yes, that's right.
That's kind of important. There's also a brief scene where he goes to the grocer, get some groceries, and the grocer kind of gives him a hard time about it when Lemus wants to be put on the bill. But eventually he does let him.
And did you recognize that grocer?
Should I have?
He's played by Bernard Lee, who plays M in the first, 13 or so Bond movies, basically all the way up through Moonraker.
And this would have been before most of those.
This is right in the middle of it.
Well, I feel like I probably should have recognized him then.
Well, he did have a mustache, so he looked a little different. Although it's hard
apparently,
to tell black and white.
Apparently mustaches are pretty effective disguises. I wonder if that's going to come up later.
Yeah.
Nancy asks him over for dinner. In the scene where they're having dinner, she asks him what he believes in, and he laughs. She's like, "What? Don't you believe in God? Don't you believe in communism or democracy or something?" So
this is where we find out that Nancy is a communist, or a member of the Communist Party, yeah.
The British Communist Party, yeah. And Lemus finds this funny, too.
And, she's on, I think she has, a little poster on her wall about, stopping war and all that stuff. So yeah.
So he also, in response to her question about what do you believe in, he says, "I believe the number 11 bus will take me somewhere, and I don't believe that Father Christmas will be driving it." So he either is or he's pretending to be someone who's totally disaffected and totally out of it.
Yeah.
And I think someone who's not paying attention would think that he has quit the British Secret Service.
Yeah, but it's revealed we later. Have no reference as to why he's, why he doesn't have a job anymore. Why is he working in this library? We're just sort of left to wonder this on our own.
So yeah, they do mention briefly, "We have one more thing we want you to do," but I guess you wouldn't necessarily think that one thing would be a whole crazy mission.
Right.
Taking a lot of time. So then he tells a story about a station wagon. Like was it like a dream that he had or something? Do you remember this?
I do not.
Okay, well, I'll mention it later.
You can cut off.
Yeah. Well, we may mention it later. Okay.
Okay.
So then he goes back to see the grocer, and he's being a huge jerk. Lemus is, not the grocer.
Right. Yeah. So he gets into a big fight with the grocer, and he also appears to be drunk.
Yes.
When he's doing it. So he's like, and I kind of liked how he very purposely picked this fight. So he goes into the grocer, and as the grocer, he's dealing with another customer who's happened to be Italian. They're done. The grocer's done with them. He's like, cash or credit, and they're off. Put it on the credit. And previously, we had found out that the grocer wouldn't give Lemus our line of credit with the store. And so he starts grabbing all this bunch of stuff, including caviar and some fancy, what was it?
It's like Italian tomato sauce or something like that. Pasta sauce
or something like that. And of course, the Italian couple comments on the Italian's pasta sauce. And then so he even he draws the race card and says, oh, if an Italian can have credit, how come an Irishman can't?
Right. So he's being really aggressive, and then it escalates to assaulting, punching the grocer.
Which, again, with the context of this being played by the guy who played M, is like, wow, British agent beating up M. That's kind of weird.
But James Bond's dreamed about doing it so many times.
But yeah, so this gets him arrested, and he's put in wormwood scrubs. Now, other than the indicator of Trafalgar earlier in the movie, after that we have no real indication of where he because I remember that part of this takes place in Berlin, and I'm like, wait, when he's going to the job office, is he in Berlin or is he in London? I had no idea.
Well, he's definitely in England. But as to where in England,
I didn't. And just in my mind, I didn't actually remember where he was, and other than the mention of wormwood scrubs, at this point, that's when I realized, oh, he's definitely in England.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. He spends basically no time in jail, at least no on-screen time.
Right.
When he leaves jail, Nancy is waiting for him, and so is a new mysterious guy.
Yes. Who is approaches him, and whose name is escaping me.
His name is Ash.
Ash, that's right. Yes.
So Ash stalks Nancy on the bus. Or that is to say, he looks like he's going to get on the bus, but then doesn't follow her. But he effectively recruits Lemus, and they have lunch together where he recruits him further.
Right. That's when it becomes obvious that he's not part of a charity organization, that he's actually an agent of Soviet intelligence or East German intelligence. We're not really sure at this point.
And this is where the heat of the movie is, where this movie is just people sitting or walking and talking. I hope you enjoyed that action at the Berlin Wall at the beginning, because that's like it.
Yeah. Well, you're forgetting it. This is all taking place in a burlesque club, or something. Well,
that's a little bit later.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
The burlesque club is later. This is just in a restaurant. So after they have that meeting, Lemus takes a bus to a taxi to a house. And inside the house is George Smiley, a name John LeCarre fans may know. But this George Smiley definitely does not look like Gary Oldman.
No.
So in this scene, they explain the plan again, just for the audience who might not understand what's going on. They explain that the idea is they're going to use this guy named Fiedler who wants to bring down Munt. They're going to get Lemus to pose as a defector to get incriminating evidence against Munt. Did I miss anything there?
No.
Smiley also mentions the girlfriend, Ms. Perry. Lemus says, leave her alone. And then now we have the burlesque show scene. That's
right. So what I found interesting was that this is the time where you get the most Bond-esque music, and of course it's in the burlesque club. I was like, oh yeah, that sounds like James Bond music, weirdly enough. So I wonder if that was a commentary on this part of the composer.
Well, maybe. I feel like if they were making this movie with James Bond in mind, we would have seen more of it besides just that. Maybe it's just 60s music makes you think of James Bond.
It could also just be 60s music, yeah.
I also liked how the nightclub was very racially and gender mixed.
I did notice that. Yeah, that was surprising, actually.
So in the burlesque club, we meet Ash's next level up, which is a guy named Carlton. And Ash kind of reveals himself to be kind of a pathetic, kind of whingy, whiny character, which is always tough to see.
Yeah.
Lemus stands up to Carlton. He's like, if you want me to help you, you better not try and push me around. He also mentions again that he doesn't want Nancy to be implicated in anything that's going on.
Right.
Carlton explains that the next step is they're going to go to Copenhagen. Right? They definitely go to Holland. Okay, no, it's fine. So they go to Copenhagen on a plane called the Flying Dutchman. Very amusing. At passport control, he learns his passport is due to expire in 18 days.
And he says he'll be back in 2 weeks, so just cutting it very close.
Right. This is not a difference, but they explain in the book, Lemus realizes that because his passport is going to expire so recently, that means he can't just like book it and just like leave and ditch these Soviet guys, as that was done intentionally.
Interesting.
So he gets interrogated by Carlton. This is his first interrogation. He talks about Operation Rolling Stone, where they moved money to Copenhagen and Helsinki. I'm just kind of moving along. They move money to pass to another agent in the Soviet Union, and he doesn't know who the agent is. He just knows that his codename was Mr. Zebold. Mr. Zebold would go to these cities, take out the money, and then there you go.
At this point, I wasn't actually sure if this was real information or if this was information that he was told to pass along or told that he could actually reveal. Like, I was very curious, like how much of what he was saying was real and how much was, misinformation.
It's a good question, and I cannot answer it. Yeah, right. I mean, we've read the book and seen the movie, and they don't answer the question, or they don't make it clear one way or the other, I should say. Okay, so then we cut back to London. Smiley goes to see Nancy. They talk about Fiedler. He says he's good at his job for a Jew.
There's a lot of not a lot, but there's some anti-Semitism.
Just calling a Jewish person a Jew, I would not say is anti-Semitism.
But saying good at a job for a Jew.
They just that part. Yeah. This one comment, yes, but the other ones, not so much. But they just keep doing it.
Yeah.
It's like, yo, enough already. We get back to Lemus. Lemus sees Fiedler. That might have been when he makes the comment about he's good at his job for his Jew. I think for a Jew. I think Carlton said that. Fiedler tells him off, and then Fiedler and Lemus discuss Remek. That was for those of you who may have forgotten, he was the guy who was shot on the bicycle in the beginning.
Right.
Lemus says that he ran all of the agents in East Berlin.
So this is where we start to get an idea of what the plot actually is, like how the plot is actually going to be carried out.
Like how they're going to get Munt.
Yeah. So this is what basically Lemus very cleverly starts planting the seeds that Munt is actually a British agent.
That's right.
And does it, when I say very cleverly, he does it, he gives Fiedler enough information to come to the conclusion on his own, and yet keeps vehemently denying the fact that he could be. And says multiple times, how could if Munt was an agent, I would know. I ran every single agent in Berlin, and apparently this gets the idea that Control is actually the one who's personally been running Munt.
Right, behind Lemus's back. But so these scenes are exactly why I know I can never be a spy, by the way. Because I would not be able to handle the pressure, because you're behind enemy lines and you have to keep all of these lies straight. And you know that if you mess up, then you're like dead.
Right.
It's like, yeah, that because so even like these burnt out old guys are still real sharp.
Yeah.
Real sharp than I could be. So also in this scene, Fiedler goes after Lemus again for not having a philosophy. He says, quote, you have to have a philosophy. And Lemus is like, no, I don't. He also signs letters to the banks in Copenhagen and Helsinki being like, hey, I didn't receive the money. Can you make sure that it was sent? We also have a scene where Nancy gets a free trip to the USSR. Isn't that exciting?
Right. How coincidental. Oh, it wasn't to the USSR, it was to Berlin, wasn't it?
Well, it was to East Berlin. It was definitely a communist country.
Yeah. That's right, because when she's telling the chief librarian, she's asked to use all her vacation time now, and she's going to Berlin, and then she mentions it with specific city and says, "Isn't that in the east?" And she's like, "Yes." Well, okay. Well, let's just not tell everyone. Just say you're just going to Berlin.
Yeah. Great decision. I'm sure that won't go wrong. Okay, so then Lemus gets jumped in his hotel room by a bunch of guards / thugs, and they bring him to Munt. Munt gives him whiskey and gives him a short interrogation before being arrested himself. And then we jump to the trial, which is like the best part of the movie.
Yeah, so we have this big trial going. Well, it's not even a trial. They specifically say this is not a trial. This is a tribunal.
It's a trial. Close enough. Someone's found guilty. Someone's pronounced not guilty. It's a trial.
Yeah, but the difference they spell out is that with this tribunal, they can decide whose testimony they want to account for and which witnesses they want to listen to. It's all what they're up to the tribunal. Yeah.
Yeah, the tribunal of judges. I mean, they are judges, even if they don't want to be called that. So Fiedler testifies, accuses Mont of being a British agent, who has been this whole time. And he mentions that Mont was in Britain doing his thing. Britain was the British were like blocking off the roads, blocking off the airplanes, blocking off the seaports. But Mont
gave out his name and photo.
Yeah, but somehow Mont was able to escape. Or they let him go.
Yep.
He also talks about how Remick was an agent for Britain, but then Mont was his superior. So if Remick was a traitor, how could Mont not know? But it would make perfect sense that if Remick was a spy, then Mont would also be a spy and covering for him.
And apparently Mont was also the person who promoted him to that position and was able to shield him from any suspicion.
So they make a pretty convincing case, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, and it's all very, I'm at this point, even though I know that Lemus was sent there to create this false case against Mont, it's pretty convincing. And I'm like, wow, he did a really good job.
Maybe I didn't read the book closely enough the first time around. But the way I remember it, maybe our readers to listen to it, is they did not spell out the plot. So we're going into the trial. When I first read it, I thought it was all legit. So when the twist comes up later, I was like, boom. It like totally worked for me. Okay, so then Fiedler is done. And then Mont's lawyer takes the stand. He says that Fiedler was either intending to send Mont up the river or was being tricked into framing him. And he interrogates Lemus. Lemus denies having known Smiley or any of that stuff. But then we'll call them the pro-Mont side, have witnesses too, and they bring in Nancy.
Yeah, and Nan is very confused why she's there, and keeps trying to talk and turn to Lemus, and of course once she gets brought in, Lemus is like, no, what's she doing here? She doesn't know anything. Leave her out of this. Tribunal is very clear that if you keep trying to talk to her or she keeps trying to talk to you, we're going to remove you and deal with you.
Right. So they ask Nancy about her financial situation. She basically has very little money, which makes sense because she works at the psychic library. And they ask her how much she pays in rent, and she says, "Oh, I don't pay any rent. I own a lease." They said, "How is that possible?" She said, "Someone bought it. Someone bought her £1,000 lease from a bank called Bat and Rodney or something like that. Whatever the name of it is. It was previously established to be a bank that British intelligence used."
Exactly. Yeah, that's the bank that Lemas used when he was sending out those checks.
Yes. So they're like, well, British intelligence paid for your apartment. And then they were like, "Has anyone come to see you recently?" She said, "Yeah, we've seen some friends of Lemus." They're like, "He doesn't have any friends. You just said he doesn't have any friends. What was the friend's name?" And she doesn't want to say, but they keep pressing her until she says...
And said Smiley.
Right. So Lemus comes clean. He explains the whole plot. He explains that British intelligence was trying to frame Mont because Mont kept killing their agents, and they relied on Fiedler to be their like attack dog.
And at this point, Fiedler comes, is like, "Wait, what are you saying? You realize what you're saying, and you're defending him. You're letting him off the hook. He's London's man, and you're just making it sound like he's not." And then the tribunal just says, "Comrade Fiedler shall be taken under custody."
Right, and then they say Lemus and the girl are under arrest, which is this is something I don't like in old movies. How there is the male character and then the girl. I hate that stuff.
In this occasion, though, I mean, because she's kind of a nobody in all of this, I can kind of understand it.
Well, in this particular case, sure. But you know what it
Yeah.
reminded me of? It reminded me of Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Oh.
So towards the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark, when Indiana Jones miraculously escapes death, and then he shows up, this is like almost at the very end, and he has the Panzerschreck anti-tank gun. He points at the Ark, and he's like, "You guys can keep the Ark. All I want is the girl."
Oh.
It's like, yo, she's standing right there. She has a name. Do you mind?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, why don't they just have the screenwriter be like, "You guys can keep the Ark. Just let Marion go." Would that have been so bad? Okay.
Fair. All right.
So getting back to the movie, they also keep calling Fiedler the Jew, which I do not appreciate either.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I thought in the communist system, all were brothers and sisters, and all were one, and there was everyone is equal.
Mm-hmm. Except obviously that's not true. Okay, so they get put under arrest, but then almost immediately Munt helps them escape.
Yeah, and this is where we learn the big twist. That Munt really is a British agent, and that the whole operation, which Lamasse did not know at all, was basically to keep him from being caught because Fiedler was getting too close to the truth.
Yep.
And so it was a whole double-blind operation to send in Lamasse to convince East German authorities that Fiedler was wrong, and that Munt was loyal to their party.
His job was to go into East Berlin to convince Fiedler to come for the king. And if you come for the king, you best not miss. But he did. But I mean, it's this whole plan is like crazy. It's something that I feel like could only work in fiction because so many things could have gone wrong. And of course, they talk about that later.
Right.
Like the next scene, they're in the car, and she's like, "Well, what about love? Like, how did they know we would fall in love?"
And he says, we made it easy for them. Basically, we made it easy for them to use us.
I also like. There's a bunch of really good lines in this part. One of which will be my favorite line later.
All right.
One of them is I like where he's like, "Okay, fine, stop asking. Kill the Jew. Now you know. God help us both." I mean, the Jew part isn't great, but I think the rest of it's cool. I like God help us both.
Yeah, so Munt sends them in a car, which I was surprised it wasn't a Trabant. It didn't look like a Trabant to me.
No, I don't think it was.
Yeah, but I thought that Trabants were like the only car you can find in East Germany.
Are they though? I mean, I know that they're really common in East Germany, but does that make them the only car that people have?
Pretty much, as far as I was led to believe.
Well, you got to keep in mind though that these Intel guys probably have like the best cars.
Oh, that's true. That's true too. Yeah.
They're not going to get what the common people get, despite the claims of equality in the Soviet Union. The high-placed government officials do not get Trabants, I don't think.
Yeah. But yeah, so they send Lamasse and Nancy over a complicated route to get to the Berlin Wall and to find this boy. They call him the boy. Will tell you how to get across. And so they pick up the soldier who's going to help them get across. As they drive and they get through the East German side of the wall. And he tells it that the signal for you to go across will be the spotlight will stop moving and will not. And so you want to go straight, and there'll be a way to get across.
So this was telegraphed earlier in the movie, a line that I also thought was cool. I'm not sure why, where one of the soldiers on the west side is like, there are still some places where you can climb.
I didn't catch that. Good catch.
Well, it's in the book too, which makes it memorable. So the fact that there's this guy here and then there's a guy operating the spotlight indicates that there's like a whole network that Munt uses to get these people back over, unless they weren't told who these people are.
Probably not. They could have been told that they're spies. That I feel like it was more of just, all right, Munt was telling them, all right, ignore these. These are I need them for an operation or something like that.
I mean, it's a totalitarian society, and he's highly ranked. He'd probably be like, these people need to go over, and you don't need to know why they're going over. Okay, so the signal goes, Lemus and Nancy go, he climbs, she climbs after him. But then...
the spotlight comes right back around, right on them. So I wasn't clear about this. Was that the same guide
It
who has
looked.
the gun?
I have the same note down too.
Okay, yeah.
It looked like the same guy.
But
Like
they're all in uniforms, and it's really hard to tell. But it looks like the guide who sent them across is the one who shoots Nancy.
It does look like that. Yes.
Yeah.
Nancy gets shot. He's at the top of the wall. Smiley's on the other side, waving at him and saying, "Jump, Mr. Lemus, come on."
On top of the wall, and like basically at the crossroads, and he's looking over, looks at one side, looks at the western side, and then looks back at the eastern side with Nan's body at the bottom, and he goes down, like climbs back down onto the east side to get to Nancy's body. And as he's climbing down, there's a voice on the megaphone saying, "Go back to your side, Lemus."
Go back, Mr. Lemus. Go back.
Yeah. And when he doesn't, he gets shot too. And that's like the end of the movie.
It's like shot, he falls over, bam, the end.
Wow. Yeah.
It's brutal.
It's kind of depressing, but it's so it really gives, like I said, the counterpoint to the Bond movies of the sort of dark, depressing business of spies.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, that's like I said, it's atmospheric. The whole movie is, and we didn't even. Well, we'll talk about it in a little bit later. How what he actually, despite his claims he doesn't have a philosophy, he does, and the philosophy is that people suck. So, do you think that Munt killed them?
I think that Munt killed Nancy because she's the only civilian who could tell people.
Okay, I could see that. Doesn't he also say Lemus goes up first and then pull Nancy after him?
I don't remember.
That may have been in the book.
It might be in the book, so that might have been, yeah. But so that's what I think it could have been. Is that so that he tells Lemus that yes, the girl will go free, but then she's a loose end. And also I noticed that Smiley didn't seem to be too surprised about Nan getting shot.
Well, we don't get to see his reaction.
True. But I mean, but when he's just saying like jump, jump, come on over, he doesn't sort of try to. Part of me wonders, did he know about it too?
Well, isn't there a part where Lemus is like, Smiley sees us as disposable? Smiley control all of them. We're just cogs in a big machine.
That's why I got that impression. Us. Yeah.
I like ambiguous endings, just in general, but especially in movies like this one.
All right.
So is it time for spy fact versus spy fiction? So because of course this is a fictional movie,
right?
We don't have spy fact in fiction.
Thing I've got is that so in the LeCarre novels, he always refers to MI6 as, or the British Secret Service as, the circus, which is not something, as far as I'm aware of, is not something that they actually ever called themselves. And and in the head of the circus is known as Control. In the James Bond movies, he's known as M, but in real life, he's known as C. Okay,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so it's actually from the very first Director General of MI5 or MI6, whose name is. So he was the first director of the Secret Intelligence MI6, whose name was Mansfield George or Smith Cumming, which is a heck of a name. So that's where the C comes. So he would sign his letters or anything that he sent out in green ink with the letter C.
Why didn't they just make up a code name?
So after that, every other director came in and called themselves C.
Nice. Anything else, or can I jump into book versus movie?
That's for actual spy fact versus spy fiction. Yeah.
Here's book versus movie stuff. There aren't any major differences, but there are a bunch of minor ones that I think are interesting. So, first of all, Remake. The beginning with Remix's death. Before he goes over and gets killed, a blonde woman in a car goes before, and she's revealed to be named Elvira, a.k.a. Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. Yeah. No one named Elvira has ever been a hero in fiction, as far as I can tell. And she was Remix's mistress, and Lemus says he told her everything, she blew the network, and she got him killed.
Oof.
And of course, this establishes that women as a weakness for spies. Then Nancy becomes his weakness later, gets him killed later at the wall, just like Remake. So speaking of women, Nancy in the book is named Liz Gold.
Mm-hmm.
She is Jewish.
Oh.
And that comes up a lot because she sees a little bit of like Jewish solidarity between her and Fiedler.
Ah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
When he is in England, the order of events are different. So like he does a few different jobs before going to the library.
Uh-huh.
He gets into a fight with a grocer after getting sick. So there's a point where he gets sick for like 2 weeks and Liz takes care of him.
Oh, okay.
And they get together, like they're together longer. They're in a relationship longer.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes more sense that she's like totally devoted to him.
Mm.
Because like in the movie, I felt like they weren't together that long.
No.
So it seems weird that he's willing, to do so much.
Mm-hmm.
So they get together. He gets in a fight with the grocer. Then he goes to jail. Then Ash recruits him like pretty much immediately after that.
Okay. All right.
Well, but that's important because he says to Liz goodbye. And then goes to get in a fight with the grocer. And then at the trial, they're like, well, why would he say goodbye unless he was planning to get in a fight if he was planning to go to jail?
Interesting. All right.
So it's like part of their case against him.
Yeah.
So he mentioned the dream with a station wagon where he sees a station wagon with a bunch of kids get in a car accident.
Uh-huh.
Do you remember that?
I don't think that was in the movie.
It was, but it was
really.
It was
I do not remember that.
Yeah, one of these really long dialogue scenes. Right. In the book, it's real, but the kids in the car don't get killed, but he almost hits them and like traumatizes him.
Wow.
And then in the at the end when he gets shot, the last thing he sees is like the faces of the kids in the station wagon again. Lemus's physical background is different. He's described as short and in his 50s.
Okay.
Whereas in the movie, he's taller than Control and he's taller than Nancy. And in the newspaper, his age is 39.
Huh. All right.
I think these differences are just to make him more photogenic, a Hollywood leading man.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last one I have is that when Munt kind of grabs him, in the book, there's an actual fight scene, which is crazy. There's no action in the book or the movie, but he like shuts off the lights, makes like an improvised weapon with like a match book, like he sticks a bunch of matches in his fist, and then when a guard and he like puts a chair in the middle of the room, and because all the lights are off, it's like a trap. So then when the guard comes to get him, he trips over the chair and he like hits him and he lays like a Liam Neeson throat punch and kills the guard.
Whoa.
Yeah. So then later when he's on the trial, they're like, you're on trial for being a British spy, but also for murder.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah.
And all of that in 200 pages.
Well, I don't know if it's 200 pages. The point is that it's really short. I joke that you could almost read the book in the time it takes to watch the movie. That's not quite true, but it is short.
From what I found out, the reason that they changed the name from Liz Gold to Nan Perry in the movie is so that because the producers are worried about the potential confusion in the media with Burton, as in Richard Burton, who played Alec Lamas. His then wife was Elizabeth Taylor.
Oh.
So just the fact that her name would also be Liz would cause confusion to the media, apparently. Even though now we have shows where literally it's, like say Roseanne or I'm trying to think of other examples. Yeah, Seinfeld, where it's literally their names.
It's always Sun in Philadelphia. And my personal favorite is Supernatural, where one of the characters was named Sam, but in Gilmore Girls, he also played a character named Dean, who's the name of his brother on Supernatural. Yeah. So one last thing I forgot to mention before. So I talked about like Jewish solidarity between Liz and Fiedler. So in the book, Liz and Fiedler like actually interact, and he's nice to her. He's like nice to her. So later, when she's like, "Oh my God, you have effectively killed him," but he was nice to me. So it makes more sense that she would be more broken up about Fiedler dying, even though he's a damn dirty commie.
But so is she.
Yeah, but she's not a spy. She's not part of the game. Like I think there's a point where Lemus is like, we all play the game. Fiedler gambled and he lost. So it's too bad that he died, but he knew what he was in for when he signed up.
Right. All right. So shall we get to our favorite quotes?
Yeah. Why don't you go first? Because mine's a little long.
Oh. I feel like we may have the same favorite quote then.
Okay.
What the hell do you think spies are? Moral philosophers measuring everything they do against the word of God or Karl Marx? They're not. They're a bunch of seedy, squalid bastards like me, little men, drunkards, queers, henpecked husbands, civil servants playing cowboys and Indians to brighten their rotten little lives. Do you think they sit like monks in a cell balancing the right against wrong? Yesterday I would have killed Munt, because I thought him evil and an enemy, but not today. Today is evil and my friend.
Nice. That was what I was gonna pick, but I do have a backup one.
All right.
So he says all that. Nancy calls him out, and he said, "Sure, Munt's evil, but he's evil and my friend. How big does a cause have to be before you'll kill your friends? What about your party?"
Ooh.
Yeah,
that's a good line too.
Ain't no good guys in this world. It's just us and them.
The mention of cowboys and Indians is interesting to me because I read this around the same time as I read the original Casino Royale novel, and I'll maybe talk about it more when we cover that, whenever that ends up. There's a whole section after he's gets beaten up and is put in the hospital, where associate in MI6 comes over, and he basically has this whole not breakdown, but like this epiphany that they're all playing cowboys and Indians, and that nothing really matters, and it's hard to tell the good guys from the bad anymore.
It's a pretty well-traveled road in spy fiction, but darn it, if it ain't effective, makes for great drama.
Yeah. So, shall we get to our ratings?
Yes.
All right, you want to go first?
Okay, so I give a little bit of thought, and I'll sort of summarize the book and the movie. So, I think this is really good. As I said, it was one I was looking forward to for a while. However, the movie is old. And it's slow, and it's a lot of just people sitting in offices and talking about abstract concepts. Like, we don't even meet Munt until like the last quarter of the movie, but they talk about him the whole time. And they're like, okay, wait, so we got Banks, we got Rolling Stone, we got Fiedler, we got Carlton, we got Ash, we got this guy, blah, 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 blah. And I think that hurts it.
All right.
I will say to audience members that if you're interested in the story, it's not exactly a controversial take to say that the book is better than the movie, but it's true here.
Interesting.
So
all right.
I think the story is really good, but going just by the movie, I would give the movie a 7 out of 10.
All right. And I think I'm going to continue the general trend of my ratings being slightly higher than yours.
That's fine.
I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10 because maybe it's just my personality and my taste, but I've found no problem with it being an old movie and having a lot of talking. And I thought that it was really well done and really effective. And I haven't seen this movie in a long time, and it's been maybe 15 years since I've read the book. So I forgot. I didn't remember the exact plot of it. So when that twist came, I was like, wow, you guys had me hook, line, and sinker, and it was great.
Cool. I wonder if me reading the books before the movie is hurting my enjoyment of them because I already know the story. So I already know what's going to happen. That may have happened in The Hunt for Red October as well.
Maybe. Well, thank you for joining us. You can find us on social media at The Spy-Fi Guys on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And next time, I'm Christian.
And I'm Zach.
And we are The Spy-Fi Guys, signing off. Thank you for listening to The Spy-Fi Guys. If you enjoyed our podcast, please be sure to give us a 5-star rating on iTunes. The theme song from this podcast is Mistake the Getaway by Kevin MacLeod from Incompetech.com, licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0. Films, books, and television shows reviewed by our podcast are the intellectual property of their respective copyright holders, and no infringement is intended.
This is a personal podcast. Any views, statements, or opinions expressed in this podcast are personal and belong solely to the participants. They do not represent those of people, institutions, or organizations that the participants may or may not be associated with in a professional or personal capacity unless explicitly stated. Any views or opinions are not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, club, organization, company, or individual.
You can find our podcast on social media at The Spy-Fi Guys on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.